All right, as always, there's plenty to get through, so joining me tonight now is Sky News senior reporter Caroline Marcus and senior writer and columnist at the Herald Sun, Patrick Carline. Caroline, Patrick, welcome to the program. Now, big news today in the ongoing Kathleen Fowlers case, with the woman once branded Australia's worst female serial killer having her conviction quashed. This has been a really long run from being found guilty of causing the deaths of her 4 children in the early 2000s up to now. Caroline, what can you tell us about this case, and are there still any lingering doubts?
Well, there are still lingering doubts for Kathleen Fowlers' ex-husband, Craig. He said back in June when she was released from prison and pardoned that he still believed that his children, their children, had been murdered. But this is not necessarily a happy day for everyone, but for Kathleen Fowlers, it is certainly a major victory, 20 years in the making. She's always maintained her innocence, and today a court of criminal appeal threw out her convictions over the deaths of her 4 children. Now, that whole case hung on mainly her private diaries, in which the prosecution at the time alleged that she had admitted guilt. Other experts have since weighed in to say, well, that could just be the kind of self-blame that you might expect to see of a bereaved parent. And of course, scientific evidence emerged since then, which put forward reasonable doubts whether the children had actually died from a genetic mutation or natural causes. Genetic mutations were found in 2 of the children and Kathleen Fowlers herself. So ultimately, her convictions are quashed. But James, what is to come is she has already indicated she is going to sue for some kind of wrongful imprisonment or some kind of malicious prosecution, perhaps. So it could be a big settlement. Fascinating.
Well, we haven't heard the last of this one yet, I'm sure, Caroline. Now, there's been a massive blow, Patrick, to the suite of anti-protest laws in New South Wales. The Supreme Court here has struck down aspects of the law that were used to basically prosecute people who had been blocking ports and other sorts of infrastructure for environmental and other reasons. Under the judgment, the government can't criminalize these activities. Make of that what you will. Patrick, down in Melbourne, you've had plenty of these sorts of problems as well with Extinction Rebellion. What's your reaction to this? Are the courts finding the right balance here between free speech and letting people get on with their lives?
Well, James, I think you make the point. These protests are about maximum disruption. They're basically about trying to get in the way of everybody else as much as they can. And there's an arrogance to that I think ordinary people are just tired of. The idea that their message is so important that they literally must stop traffic and bring everything to a standstill is absurd and offensive, frankly. Down here, the Victorian police have started fining them. I think it's about $385 a pop. And it's really hoped, I mean, that's the way to go. Hopefully it will temper this sort of protest zeal, which doesn't represent mainstream views. These are very extreme views. And I think average people are very tired of it.
Absolutely, they are. Now, Caroline, you know what else people are being tired of is high energy bills and being told they can't use their energy, which has just happened in New South Wales, where the energy minister, as I said earlier, has gone and said, turn down your aircon, don't use the dryer, turn off your dishwasher. We're an energy-rich nation, Caroline. This is surely not excusable.
Well, Penny Sharpe, the energy minister here, she wants us to put our air conditioning on to between 24 and 26 degrees here in New South Wales this evening between 5 and 9 o'clock. Now, that to me is heating. Am I wrong?
Correct.
That is more like heating. I'm not going to sit there and swelter when today in Sydney we've faced temperatures of up to 38 degrees. And personally, I know that the energy market operator might be warning this is going to put too much demand on our grid. I would prefer that our leaders tackle the question of having more supply in the grid, perhaps not shutting down coal power stations like Liddell earlier this year.
And maybe build a nuclear plant, hey? I don't know. Crazy talk. And now, finally, Patrick, I just want to ask you here, big political fight gearing up here between state Labor premiers in New South Wales and Victoria and the federal government over infrastructure funding. Now, does Jim Chalmers here have a point about this, or is this going to be a new Donnybrook that Albanese and Chalmers are going to have to sort out?
Well, I think I suspect that Tim Pallas actually has a point on the numbers if you look at them literally. What I also suspect is he's not going to get a lot of sympathy given that he's presided over record debts for Victoria, which we will be paying for decades. You look at the suburban rail loop, which hasn't even begun yet. That's $35 billion. No one really understands why it's going to be built and how it's going to help. It's a dirty word to a lot of Victorians already, and the Victorian government wants federal funding for that. I think most people will be saying, please don't fund this because it's a dud.